Still not here, still not here. And we are live, Rocco. I can see it on my channel.
Yeah, mine's still. It's black screen,
Yeah.
but it is ticking over. There we go.
Well,
So, hello, folks. If you're back again, I'm glad to have you back. If you're here for the first time, what you're watching is a live stream where Chetan and I, we're the two founders of a project called A Better Way, and we both have a similar vocations in the world. We want to obviously, we're devoted to our own personal development, but we're also part philosophers, part spiritual teachers, part, um, we have mentor programs with certain people. We're commenting on the state of the world. We're trying to figure out what better might look like. We both are corporate exiles, in other words, people that have their professional development in life came out of that sphere, and it's probably one of the sickest spaces in the world. And really, it's given us social media, which has broken everything. It's given us AI, which is now breaking everything in a whole different way. And today we're just going to be talking about that, and we're going to be also talking about our journeys, because our journeys have been personally difficult as well. And we're humans. And what I want to do specifically today is reject that whole idea of when people have a YouTube channel or if they have a project like this, they're supposed to show up as if they have a $100,000 production budget, and if they got perfectly, as if we're professional presenters. We're not.
mm,
We're just two human beings. And I want to actually take a conscious step away from that synthetic, overproductionized, perfect looking, because whatever we do and whatever we say, we're normalizing and we're projecting that image as good and normal. And I want to actually hold a line against that. Yeah.
mm.
So, Chetan, thanks
Yeah,
for
Rocco.
joining me unrehearsed today, man.
Yeah. Th- this is slightly more unrehearsed for me, honestly, because I wasn't in that headspace, honestly. I was still assuming. By the way, I'm just back from my vacation just a couple of days back. I'm still not completely over the jet lag, even. And I was under the impression that today is going to be a chilled out Sunday for me. I have a few things planned, but it was just going to be me chilling out the entire day, not doing a thing.
Yeah, well, this should be no break from that, actually.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a good
actually, yes.
space to catch you in, because I wanted to
Mm,
catch you. It's good, actually, sometimes
mm,
to have conversations where we're not over prepared, you know?
mm. Yeah, yeah.
So, what we were trying to do before is we were trying to like develop some momentum. But if we're honest with ourselves, we're not really ready actually to receive or welcome community members, not properly. If somebody
Mm,
wants to come along for the journey, it's going to be fun to watch what we're doing here. But we're probably jumped ahead a bit too far. We don't really have a sane execution plan, and I think it's not just us. I think everyone in the world was kind of building up to something that kind of had a big release that we don't really know how to process.
mm,
So many people are going through something similar,
mm,
and
mm,
people don't know how to process this, because in my context, in my work, we don't have a cultural framing for this. We don't have a shared cultural framing for the universal shifts and this difficult transition that we're all going through. Like, we're all encountering the rise of war.
mm.
We're all encountering this AI tech disruption. We're all encountering this childish, juvenile, destructive politics that's coming, that's emanating out of the
Mm.
United States.
Yeah,
And it's like the veil has lifted from me. I look at social
that's
media
good.
now
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
see it as such a fucking joke. All
yeah,
of the content is a joke.
yeah, yeah.
The comments people make are ridiculous.
Mm, mm, mm.
There's no intelligence there, there's no discernment there. And if there is, you can't find such people, because the algorithm, it's undiscerning. So it just keeps spewing nonsense out based on word matches. You
Yeah.
know,
And even if you find such people, Rocco, what I feel is, see, if we were to record this video and then make shorts out of this, there will be like millions and millions of doom scrollers just scrolling through Instagram or YouTube, they will
Mm.
encounter a short. Maybe even the content resonates with them. Maybe they share it out with their friends or in their WhatsApp status and whatnot,
Mm.
and then back to doom scrolling. So it's like we are in this machine of ridiculously um,
It's
in
absurd.
it's just absurd, right? And even if we want to create a difference, say we are saying that content and the volume of content is absolutely garbage now.
Yeah.
It's reached ridiculous proportions, and we
Yeah.
still are creating content to actually talk about that, and
There's
that's
an
just so
absurdity
ironic.
to it. Yeah.
Exactly right. But
Yeah.
then again, like we have always talked about, the solution to bad science is not no science; it's better
Mm.
science. The solution to bad content or too much content cannot really be no content. It has to be
That's
better
it.
content, and we're trying to get towards that.
And now we have an even bigger problem, or an exacerbating problem.
Hmm. We have Maya with us, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
we're not making funny faces today.
Hello, Maya. Good
Say hello,
morning.
Uncle Chetan. Say, you can use your words. Oh, she's not verbal today. Okay, off you go, Scallywag.
Bye, Maya.
Bye, Maya. Have a nice time at swimming. She doesn't know how to not act. She's feeling awkward.
Hmm.
I was saying there's an exacerbating problem whereby there was a barrier to entry for certain kinds of content creation.
Hmm.
Take Substack, for instance. That's where I do long form writing and where I do ideating and I'm philosophizing there and I'm
Hmm.
writing persuasive writing and I'm writing that kind of style of poetry that I write, which is not just poetry, it's like programming for the psychology and for the consciousness. Yeah?
Hmm.
But now, when you get undiscerning people that don't know that what they're looking at is craft,
Hmm.
they think, oh, I would want that. I want to get the likes. So
Hmm.
now Substack let's say, you know, call it 100 million
Hmm.
people,
Hmm.
of which maybe 10% were writers and the other were punters and readers. And now with AI, any moron, even
Becomes a
without
writer.
something profound to say, or even if they have something meaningful to say,
Hmm.
they don't understand that there's a craft that distinguishes output of craft from
Hmm.
output of content.
Yeah.
And then they also just create content and they don't actually go through the hard apprenticeship that I had to in all of that writing to actually develop my voice and to develop my writing style and to develop the rigor of articulating complex ideas and creating segues between things. And now they're just flooding. So we had 100,000,
Hmm.
oh, so let's call 100 million people. Now we've got 600 million people.
Hmm.
And it's not just 10% of them are writers. Now 50% of them are writers.
Writing. Yeah.
And now Substack has got a hard on for growth. And now they're emulating Reels. And now
Hmm.
they're emulating Twitter.
Hmm.
And now we've just got this enshittification of the platform, this algorithmic kind of, it's like falling back into a black hole
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
synthetic bullshit. And now it becomes even harder for people to reach each other.
Yeah.
And then when you try and discourage people from, you read their comments or their posts, it's written by ChatGPT. It's so
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so obvious that it's written by ChatGPT. It all sounds the same, and I want to throw
Hmm.
up in my mouth.
Hmm.
And then you say to them, hey man, like what you're saying sounds important. Don't you think this is better said in your own words? There's something that's lost here when you
Hmm.
use AI, but they're so fucking stupid in themselves that they've only got one dimensional answer for that, which is don't be afraid of AI. AI is just a tool.
Hmm.
Saying the words,
Hmm.
but treating it like not a tool, treating it like where you actually are never going to test your own voice in prod because you're getting this thing to say your things for you. And then they respond in a comment that is also clearly written by ChatGPT.
Hmm. Hmm.
I've seen people write posts and the post is written by ChatGPT and then somebody else comments and the comment is by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So we've got ChatGPT commenting on ChatGPT posts and a human being is sitting there accruing fake likes
Hmm.
and a good percentage of the noise is that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Instagram. If you only post selfies that are glamorous,
Mm.
it's not the real you.
Mm.
And you're putting filters on to make people think you're more glamorous and beautiful than you are. What is the game that you're playing there? For
Mm.
what?
Yeah.
So that a non true version of you can be liked more than you.
That's
Right.
it.
Now, that, what that happened on Instagram is now happening, but not in photos,
Mm.
in writing.
Yeah.
You are sharing your non thoughts
Mm.
to reflect what a deep thinker you are.
Mm. Mm.
What
Mm.
a fuck
Mm.
up.
Yeah. What a fuck up.
And
Really.
then you're trying to help people to say, dude, this is not actually good for you. Your AI is not conscious and tender. Uh, it's not helping you grow as a person because they're saying these things. And then when
Mm.
you argue it, they think that your argument is just one dimensional. You are afraid of AI. I'm not afraid of fucking AI, you clown.
Mm.
I'm afraid that human beings adopt something without realizing what we're throwing away.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
And you'll notice the thumbnail for this video, it says straight talk. It's a joke
Mm.
because the AI is
Mm.
struck
Messing
out.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I use AI for writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who
Of
wants to
course.
write blurbs of a post
Mm. Mm.
or respond to long emails? Who cares?
Mm. 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 But this is where I feel what we're doing here, what we have started to do here, Rocco, the 20-day live challenge that both of us did, the live videos that we have been trying to put out
Raw.
every single week, raw, authentic stuff, which is where I think uh, you can still fake in a recorded video. You can do that for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, but once it crosses a certain barrier, you can see that this is just raw. Like the 20-day live videos, if you do that for 2 3 days, maybe you can fake it out, but you cannot do that for 20 days in a row. So
No,
that's what I realized, I think around day 17 or day 18, that dude, if I want to share my channel with someone and tell them,
it's got
if
to
they
be like
ask
this.
me,
Yeah.
exactly, right, if they ask
Yeah.
me what a better way is about, I'm going to tell them this is what we did in March 2025. Just watch these 20 videos, or at least a bunch of them, and you'll know what we stand for:
Yeah.
raw, unauthentic,
Yeah.
without AI, without glamour, without anything.
Yeah.
This is what we human beings are. And
Mm.
that's what I feel we need at this moment. In the age of everyone going AI, I think raw, authentic stuff will
Is going to
actually,
be more appealing. Yeah.
exactly, that's going to appeal to the soul. But that's it, right, do Roku. The catch there is that the soul is what is being degraded out, and like people don't even care about the soul anymore. It's
They don't
all,
know to care
they
about it.
don't know to. Yes, we are uninitiated even towards that
Yeah.
appreciation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Hmm.
you're right. So that's the kind of spirit that we're meeting under today. That's the background energy of some of my work on Substack on YouTube at the moment is I want to challenge and counter that. Now you'll know, just to bring whoever cares up to speed about what's going on. So while you were away, I released a few things about the sacred game.
Yeah.
You've read this. It's a continuation
Hmm.
of an earlier piece where I wrote self-initiation for serious players.
Hmm.
I'm introducing this idea, this revolutionary idea, evolutionary idea that we are already all playing the game of life. Every day we're becoming something. We're going to get to the end of our lives and we would have become something. Now, it's a game in that there are rounds to this game. It's a game insofar as we take things very, very seriously, and we only realize afterwards that they weren't as real, or as we had these kind of childish synthetic framings to things. And we realize only after these periods of having our asses kicked karmically, we have like a karmic harvest. And when you look at the mess on the floor and you look at what you did bring in and you look at what you did lose, etc., you suddenly realize that you're going to have another round again. And you've watched that movie About Time that I told you about?
About time.
It's
I
that
don't.
one where the young kid can travel back in time.
No, 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 no. I've
Oh,
just
you want
watched
to
it.
watch that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't want to spoil the movie, but the gist
Hmm.
is they have this weird power in the
Hmm.
movie. All the
The
all the
men in the movie.
sons of a certain family line,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's not a sci-fi movie. Funny enough,
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
just a little way of being able to paint a picture about things that are true in the world, that we can only live life forward, but we have to understand it backward. But even knowing that that Soren Kierkegaard quote is true makes us step more carefully into each day, knowing that you can almost apply a kind of forethought to every step you're going to take, to say at some point in time, the tracks that I'm laying down now, I'm going to have to ride them.
Mm, mm, mm,
I,
mm,
I'm, I'm laying a foundation, I'm making choices that I'm going to reflect back on. And the quality of choices I can make is always, the more present I am, the more intentional I am, the more discerning I am. Those kind of choices mean when I look back, I have less regret,
mm,
because
mm,
I'm
mm.
playing the game more honestly, more authentically, more real, more in
Consciously.
alignment with my Dharma and my truth.
Yeah.
And we realize this, right?
Mm,
And that we're all playing this game, and that means we can play this game better or worse,
mm,
more consciously and more deliberately, or we can play it unconsciously and haphazardly. And if we're honest with ourselves, everything we're doing, even the human society at the moment, is a collective game that we're all contributing towards, but it's a fucking mess.
mm.
It's it's not present, it's not discerning, and it's not intentional. We have very small framings. We don't realize that we're all collaborating to a collective becoming.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
arriving in that framing makes you want to start think about doing things in a more in a way that you're going to be prouder of, that creates more meaning, that you're going to have less regret about, that you think, oh shit, I can actually be part of the solution here, not part of the problem.
Yeah.
And those posts that I put out are these gradual way of me ideating my thoughts, but also saying, oh, this is the kind of work I want to do with and for a better way. I want to open a container like a dojo where
Mm.
people can come and learn this education that I've put myself through, that I'm now putting you through. That I
Right.
think you've suddenly realized, there was a moment that came where you realized I wasn't just a guy with good ideas. There's a real pathway, a golden pathway that we can get on
Yeah.
and improve through agile mechanisms. And actually, if it works for one, it can work for a two. If it works for
Mm.
two, it can work for a marriage. If it works for a marriage, it can work for a family. If it works for a family, it can work for a village and a company and a country and a people and a society and a
Mm.
you
Mm.
can see
Mm.
that now, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I want to invite people into that game. But I haven't actually said that out loud until recently.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so I'm framing that.
Yeah.
And then I spoke about the polycrisis and the meta crisis, which is
Mm.
this idea that you know that sometimes there's so many things going wrong at once that
Mm.
they all compound on each other. And even if we had individual answers for these individual things, when they start happening together, there's a new order of concern that arises. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And we're seeing that.
Yeah.
And until this, again, it's a framing thing, because when you frame to people, yes, that political problem is a problem. Yes, the
Mm.
Kashmir India thing, yes, it's a problem.
Mm.
But zoom the frame out and look at all of these things happening together. Look at how social media distorts our ability to solve that conflict.
Mm.
Look at how it distorts the nature of the conflict.
Mm.
Look at how it brings in religious friction and agitates it into that conflict. When you suddenly see, oh, it's polycrisis, there's multiple things happening that are going wrong at once, and to try and solve each problem in a siloed way is to fail, because it's not the actual problem. The actual problem is this: you have many problems that are all affecting each other.
Yeah.
And then there's the meta crisis, this way in which our ignorance of what better might look like, that there is a big picture, that our defaults, none of them are going to lead to meaningful outcomes, which means we're not only blind, but we're blind to our blindness, right? Not only are we inept, but we're unaware of the delta between what we should be rolling like and how we should be thinking versus how we think by default. And then the meta crisis is fed by the poly crisis, because then you try and raise awareness of this via YouTube or Substack or podcasts. And then nobody can really hear that because they're stuck in their siloed problem,
Yeah.
unaware of the meta crisis. It really is a fucking problem.
And
So,
it's the problem of our time, Rocco.
Oh
It's
fuck,
the
dude.
problem of our time.
Yeah.
I'll let you go on. I'll just add
Mm.
something there. I've had this discussion with a few friends lately because I've also started to realize that this is a real thing and it's a now thing. It's an unprecedented problem. We
We're at
haven't
the
had.
edge now.
We're at the edge now, right? And one of the responses to that was, like you say, the sky has always been falling. Dude, we have always had these kinds of problems. When we were kids, I'm a 90s kid. So when I was a kid, television had just come across in India, and there were parents, there were elders, the adults who were worried that television is going to spoil children. It's going to be bad for our
They
society.
were right.
They were right, right? They were right.
And it's
But
not that there was no good in television, is that
mm,
none of us were mature or experienced enough to realize
mm,
how to balance that.
yes, yes.
And then the children looked at the adults and said, "Ah, they're so old fashioned, they don't know
Mm,
anything." And they
mm,
were right too.
exactly,
And the
exactly.
problem is we don't have that balance
Mm.
in
That's the
initiation and in societies where we've got some elders that are holding the line
mm,
and some progressive pioneering to adapt to change, and
mm,
that balanced by our
mm,
cultural cultural keepers and our philosophers.
mm,
That's
mm,
that
mm,
helm leadership model that I speak
mm,
about. Because if you
mm,
have that, you can handle this change.
mm,
But we don't have that, so we can't
mm,
handle the change.
yeah.
And the kids were right that the adults didn't understand, right that the kids didn't understand.
Mm,
But
mm,
there's two problems there. The one is you're losing something that you want to preserve, and
mm,
the other one is that you need to adapt to change, because
mm,
that's emergence.
mm,
But emergence only works if you retain your coherence.
mm, mm,
And
mm.
coherence only works if you know what your essence you're safeguarding
Sense
as
is.
you make your changes. And that's the
Yeah.
absence of initiation again. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're in a stage where social media is influencing the way people think outrightly. And these two silos that you've talked about, let's just assume these two silos, even these two silos within social media are in a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're in a feedback loop where they keep getting confirmation biased for their own ways of thinking. And there's the entire problem really is a lack of initiation of this very problem, like the meta problem that we're in. We have never faced this problem before. We have never had these kinds of influences, these kinds
The
of
complexity
stimuli.
of the polycrisis is
Mm.
new. It's just a
Yeah,
new level.
yeah, yeah,
And that's not always been happening before.
yeah.
We've reached a threshold that we've never breached before.
Mm, mm, mm,
And what got you here is not going to get you there, which means all our old models
mm,
of solving problems become so inefficient
mm,
at this scale of complexity and chaos that but the nature of everybody is to run back to orthodoxy, run back to hierarchies, run back to their old religions of faith,
yeah.
because that's where they find safety and permission from.
Mm, mm,
Because
mm,
when you're uninitiated, the only way you can make big calls about big consequences is if everybody agrees with you, if you
mm.
have approval. And the only way to get mass approval is to adopt mass subscribed
Ideas.
operating model, like a religion or a corporate culture or a, and so we're all remaining children actually.
Yeah. That's it really. That's it. And that's the challenge with this entire thing, right, Roku? I now totally understand. I now somewhat understand, I would rather
Can you
say.
talk us through that
Mm,
change that's happened for you?
mm. I was about to actually
Do
talk
you know
about
what I
that.
mean?
Yeah, and I'll tell you something outrightly. It's very hard to talk about it still for me because I'm still processing it, and I feel that this is such a new thing overall. Um, the idea of us needing a better society is something that we all agree with, but then the idea that we need to be the ones to step up and create a better society, and
It's daunting.
it is daunting, really it is. And there is a part of me which keeps knocking back and saying, do you really think you should be the one? Do you think you are ready for it? Do you think you are really up to the challenge? And I know that it's like no one else is coming, and I
Yeah, it's a paradox.
yeah, yeah.
It's a paradox because no, you're not ready, but then you suddenly realize that the whole definition of an adult leader is when they realize, fuck, I'm not ready, but no one else is coming and I have to do
Mm,
something. And all I can do is do things imperfectly,
Hmm.
with the willingness to change and improve, but I can't do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't accept something that doesn't look very obviously worse to me. Like I can see how the
That's it.
worst politics, all the politics
Yes.
out there, almost all the corporate culture out there, it's the worst answer to our problems. It's
I
not the
know.
better answer, right? Uh,
And there's better and worse within those.
mm,
And that's
mm,
the
mm,
problem. Like sometimes you criticize the left or the right, or sometimes you criticize the conservatives or the progressives.
mm,
And then everybody, if you criticize the conservative, they'll blame you for being progressive.
yeah,
If you
yeah,
criticize the progressive, they blame you
mm,
for being conservative. And actually,
mm,
what you're saying is sometimes
mm,
just because there's no right or wrong does not mean there's not better or worse. And in this instance, A would have been worse,
mm,
significantly worse,
mm,
by a higher order concern or metric, a transcendent level
mm,
of
mm,
judgment and discernment than
mm,
you are stuck in and applying. And you are looking at everything like this. And
mm,
I'm realizing it's not just that all religions are equally bad, it's
mm,
that in certain contexts, one religion is actually worse than the other because of a certain behavior pattern, or because of a certain resistance, or because of
mm,
a certain belief.
mm,
I'll give you an example.
mm.
I'll make it quick because I really want to start asking you some questions.
Yeah.
And it's actually important. I won't give that example. I'm going to move into this.
Okay.
It's important that you feel not ready. It's important that you're still processing, because really this live call is going to, you'll realize this is important. This is going to be part of that processing,
Mm,
because you are now being brought to the edge that you wouldn't have brought yourself to, and you wouldn't have known how. And you're going to realize in a moment it doesn't matter, because you have to show up saying, like, I learn what I think as I hear myself speak,
mm, mm,
number one.
mm,
And number two, like, I don't want to be inauthentic. Now I have to say things. Now I have to say them badly. Now I have to tell on myself. Now I have to. And that almost becomes like a, you know, it's like when you first date someone and you eventually go, you know what, they're going to see me naked at some point. I have to break that spell. Okay, fine. This is it. Now you can choose whether you like it or not.
mm.
It's scary, but it's liberating
Yeah.
at the same time, and it's also hugely necessary. So I want to just shift gears a little bit,
Mm,
and I want you to give a little bit of witness to your
mm,
own journey, and at the same time, a kind of witness to this process that you've been going through, and at the same time, a witness to the sacred game that you've been initiated into, and what a profound game changer that is. What you thought you knew. So
mm,
let's start there, and obviously you can sanitize this in whichever way. Now,
mm,
we're all undergoing life changes. So I know that your father passed away over
mm.
a year ago.
Yeah.
I know that your relationship with your job has been progressively changing.
Mm,
I
mm,
know that there's a watershed moment that's come in your life where you have to now find a new gear, hold a new kind of space, both in this project
mm.
and in your personal project at home,
Yeah.
for your
Yeah.
family. And I also know that you had a journey of unbecoming and unlearning and awakening and some level of enlightenment, some level of realization. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that first
Mm,
journey,
mm,
that first leg of the journey?
mm. The first leg of my journey, Rocco, was quite honestly all around unlearning. All around unlearning, because unlearning used to be the word that would always keep coming up to me, because I realized at that point of time, around those points of time, that
How old were
almost
you then?
um, this was 2017, I guess. So 25-ish is when it started for me. It started to dawn on me that the things that were holding me back from the truths about life,
And
were
about
really,
yourself.
and about myself, were really things that I had learnt from all the different conditionings that I've had, my childhood, my parents, my family, my school, my teachers, my friends, my relationships, all of that jazz. And I had realized that I had started to be cemented in a way of thinking about the world and my world, which was just flawed. I just realized at some point that it was all flawed. One of the
Uh,
biggest
What
catalysts,
was the incentive for you rejecting that? What was it costing you, basically? What was it
um,
making you become? What was it? Because there was a point where you became like emotionally almost or psychologically invested in committing to
growing up.
what was it? Oh shit! I don't want to die being a sheep in that machine, or was it? Oh my gosh! There's an inheritance that I belong to that I want to belong to that
That is
I'm being
something that has
denied.
happened now, really. For me, at that point of time, um, the story in my mind about that uh, point in time, Chetan, is that I just suddenly realized how wrong I had been, how limited I had been.
How
And there's
small?
this, how small I had been, really. And then I also realized that there is something to be said about how I had small ideas about what fulfillment would look like. And
Mm.
when I realized that, that book, Thinking Fast and Slow, that was one of the biggest catalysts for me, because when I realized that my own thinking is biased, my own thinking is full of all of these biases and fallacies, I somehow made a decision with myself that I do not want to be taking more decisions before I have learnt more about this, before I have decoded my own psyche better. Because suddenly, the fact that I was an atheist, I was a staunch atheist who would profess atheism to people, I was doubting that. And that was a big part of my personality at that time. And I started to doubt being
How
an
sure we
atheist.
are when we're young.
Exactly, man. And that's what I realized, that's the thing. I realized I was young. I realized I wasn't grown up enough. And I wanted to be grown up enough. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I just wanted to
It's
grow
an
up.
authenticity thing. Authenticity wants to be authentic.
Yeah. And once you know that you can be better, you want to be better. Like that's just, I don't have a reason for it. I just wanted to be better. I wanted to know more. I wanted to understand more. And
Do you recognize that you assumed at the time that if you had that compulsion, others must have that too?
of being better.
Of that, like that commitment to self honesty and that commitment to, I don't want to bluff an attainment. I want to actually have some level of integrated attainment.
True. But,
And
that's really something, one of the things that used to resonate a lot with me at that time, it still resonates with me, is the fact that I realized that I can only lift people up to my own level of consciousness. I cannot guide people beyond what I
of
understand.
course,
Of
of
course,
course,
right?
like a
And
jiu-jitsu teacher, how are you going to teach somebody to be better at the game than you?
than
It's
you are, right?
impossible.
Exactly,
Mm.
right? And that's when I realized that, dude, there is, it's not, I didn't have children. I wasn't even married at that point, but something clicked in me where I realized that I can be taking up more responsibility than I have right now. I will be taking up more responsibility than I have on my shoulders right now, and I need to level up. Because the moment you know
You
that,
wanted to meet your calling that you felt was coming.
yes,
Right.
that's it, really. Yeah.
Okay. So and then at what
Mm.
point did you realize, and how long did it take you to realize that other people didn't have that kind of response? So the one response is to you feel a sense of shame that twinges you, and then it forces you. It's not forces you. You desire more authenticity. You desire more realness. You desire to liberate yourself from that small confusion.
Mm. Mm.
Some people don't. They want to. Their response is to pretend better.
Yeah. Pretend better. Yeah.
Now, when did you realize that the other people that you were, let's call it, competing with for airspace or airtime on, when was it, Instagram or
Mm.
podcast or whatever, is that you were playing one kind of game and almost everyone else is playing the other game?
Um, I think there was. a time period before I actually started sharing all of these things. Like I went through a serious phase where I was meditating and seriously reflecting on things via all the books I was reading, the hundreds of books that I read during those 2 3 years.
Yeah.
And after that, when I started to share my understanding with the world, let's say online, one of the key motivations for me was that the way I have changed, I would want other people to also change. I would, because that would lead to a better society, that would lead to children already knowing how they can be better from the start, right? But when I started to share things, I did realize, I don't know when, I don't know by when, but I did realize that almost everyone else who's sharing stuff online is probably regurgitating all the quotes, and they're not really understanding. It's
They were more excited to grow an account,
than
and
to actually
yeah, like people who
that was
like
the end.
Batman or who like Star Wars,
Hmm.
they're not really trying to become actual Jedi's. They're just excited about the mythos,
Hmm.
the culture.
Yeah, for me the Instagram account, the blog that I started, not the podcast at that time, but even the podcast and the YouTube channel, all of those were a means to an end, and these things were not the end in themselves. To have a better Instagram account is not the end that I'm gunning for. That's
But
not what I
we got lost in that, and then you realize that
which
most of the other people that you're competing with for likes and airtime,
mm,
like what was his name? Bless him, America.
America. I
He couldn't tell that there was a there. He didn't realize that there was a level of authenticity that he couldn't subscribe to.
And you couldn't break through him. You couldn't. It was
Correct.
like,
At what point in time did you realize that that we're not the same? Humans are not actually the same in that sense.
you know
We have
what,
one or
Rocco?
two intuitions. Yeah.
I'll tell you something, man. I think I realized that immediately, but I doubted that realization until I met you. Like, very honestly, especially about America, I had that intuition. I had that about other people as well, but I doubted my realization because I had come up even via all this unlearning. One of the things that had cemented in my mind was to not judge, was to really, like, I could understand that people go through their own cycles and their own life paths, and therefore to judge is to condemn the life path that they've been on. So do not judge, which meant for me personally that even the things that I was realizing about people directly, I started to doubt my own realizations. And I remember specifically when I discussed
Or
this with you.
downplay them. You didn't doubt them. You just downplayed that.
Hmm.
You made that a less relevant signal in your evaluation.
Ah,
Yes.
yes, really. And that's when we started to talk about it, I think I started to derive my sense of permission from you at that time. That dude, this guy is also talking about the same thing, and I respect him. That was again an intuition that I thankfully trusted, Rocco. I thankfully trusted
Which
that
is a
intuition.
credit to your discernment, actually.
Yeah, I realize that now. Yes, true.
Mm-mm.
So that's when I think I would say that if you ask me when did I realize that people were different online, I had that intuition, I had that realization probably from the start, but I was doubting it, I was downplaying it until I met you, and I saw that
Right.
someone that I respect is
Right.
also having the same realization, and therefore I gotta give that realization some more credit.
Mm.
And yeah, that's when.
So I
Mm,
can reflect that back to
mm,
you. I went to Ireland on that
mm,
walking tour to go and meet one of my heroes, David White.
yeah,
And it was wonderful. He's an incredible guy. Jesus Christ, that guy's a master in his craft. But
yeah.
and I say this with discernment and respect. He's a great soul, but he's not a good man,
Mm, mm, okay.
and he's not a bad man,
Mm, mm,
but he's
okay.
not like a model of leadership, of masculine leadership that I would ascribe to. I, but I could only tell that by connecting with his signal viscerally, like being in the same room as him. But there
Mm,
was a man who I met through him
mm.
that gave me the signal that I secretly wanted to get by going there.
Wow.
And the
Wow.
way I describe it is somebody naturally plays a chord, like on a sitar or a guitar,
mm,
and you can't play the chord, but
mm,
you can hum the one that they played. And
mm,
if you can hum it, you teach yourself to play it, and you can get closer and closer to the right sound because you know what the hum should sound like. But you can only
mm,
have gotten that if you hear them once playing the chord.
mm,
And
mm,
what we do as leaders, as thought leaders, as mentors, as just other humans to each other in community, we relay signals of
mm,
authenticity,
mm, mm,
signals of permission, and really those two should have go together. If your sense of self permission and authenticity don't derive from the same reasoning and the same self knowledge, I question that.
mm, mm, mm,
And it's not just language, it's a lived example. I call it a signal. Some people relay a signal by just
mm,
how they are.
yeah.
And the thing that I brought to you was taking the word judgment, language, any
Mm,
language, and and not even unlearning, but almost looking into it to
mm,
see what the heart of it is, and to see that there's always a shadow and an exalted expression of everything, and
yes,
that
yes.
if you just throw the whole thing out, you remain small. But
Mm,
if you can tell what's wrong with judgment and then tell what's right with judgment, you can focus on the right, and you
mm,
can elevate that and
mm,
safeguard against that. And
mm,
now what is the good thing? The good thing is discernment.
mm, yeah.
If you can't judge other people and say, I think that's wrong, okay, cool. First, have the courage to say, I think that that's wrong.
Mm,
I don't have to condemn them, but I can condemn the behavior. Now I must be curious. Now that I've given myself permission to do the wrong thing, I can now be curious about what is that in my shadow
mm,
that finds that is wrong. Let me first admit my truth.
mm, mm, mm,
Something puts me off about that. What is it?
yeah.
Now, if you can't admit that, you can't do the second thing.
Mm, 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 mm,
Yeah.
mm, yeah.
And
I get
and
that. Mm,
I realized that's why I say curiosity and self-permission are the two wings of the soul.
mm, mm,
Because how can you actually elevate yourself higher if you can't look at things from a transcendent perspective, and that you can't even look at your own judgment of something and
mm,
allow for it, and then be curious about that without moralizing or filtering it or shutting it down? Because how can you come to true self knowledge if you disallow your own voice?
yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Mm,
And, but that must be hard, because what was it that made you not categorize me as purely arrogant or purely egotistical? Because it seems that way.
Man, I think one of the things that really helped was that we had a lot of conversation, and I was, um, how do I put this? How did how did I judge you for not being a part of that crowd? I think your authenticity spoke out, dude. It was just the way you were showing up. It was the way you were actually also talking about the fact that this may sound as if you're being arrogant, but you're not. And it's, oh, one more thing. You also used to talk about, you still talk about that the entire job of being understood is not yours. It's partly mine. It's almost more than half my job. You know, if I have to understand you, it has to be my job as well. I need to bring in my private key as well. The private key
Right.
bit, I think, has come in now. But back in the day, also, you had talked about this a lot, where you would say that
I had a
the.
quote that said,
Mm,
trying to be understood, it requires it's an enormous responsibility.
mm,
But trying to understand someone else is actually comparatively easier, because
mm,
there's all you have to do is just get out the way a little bit and make room and
mm,
be charitable towards anything that might be there.
mm, mm,
But if we leave the other person to do all the carrying of all of that responsibility, all that effort,
mm,
how what happens then?
mm,
What happens if that person actually has the answer that we need, a meaningful answer that can change our thoughts, our life, our consciousness, unlock something for us?
mm,
But we are just half listening to shut down, or
Yeah.
we prejudging them, and we say we
Prejudge.
don't judge, but that is what real judgment is. It's
Yeah.
you're deciding the truth of someone else before you've really given them a chance to listen.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. 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 So I think that is something I'll say. And also, Rocco, from not just the deep interactions we had, the initial interactions also, the kinds of comments that you would leave on my posts, the kind of posts that you would have back then, I could see that they were different, man. I could see that the level of conversation that you were having was different than the level of conversation that quotes from other authors. There's only so much you can say in someone else's words, right? There's only so much you can just keep talking about someone else's quotes and just sharing your commentary on it. Nothing else.
Mm,
That's almost everything that everyone else was doing. Sharing quotes from someone else and a little bit of commentary,
mm,
and you weren't that at all. You weren't that
no,
at all.
no.
And that really did stand out for me.
Mm.
Ask me something
So
else also, Rocco. Ask me
yeah,
something deeper. Yeah, go on.
go for it.
No, no, go on. I mean, I want to have some question to anchor my answer to. I'm sort
Oh,
of
you
interested
like
in
the
that answer.
questions. You're liking the
Yeah,
questions. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Mm,
So the other question I wanted to ask you is, how hard was it? Because I wrote that piece that said, the longer I go in my journey of struggle and overcoming, is I always realize it's not an ordeal that I'm overcoming. It's always myself.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
always
yeah.
ourselves that we're
Yes.
overcoming. And so
Yeah.
the one thing you had done that was uh, it was noble, it was wise, it was prudent, it was well executed, it was a good thing, right? It
Mm,
was a personal accomplishment, was the unlearning.
yeah. Yeah.
But then inadvertently you made an identity out of unlearning.
Yes.
And the hardest part was realizing that that was keeping you small.
Mm,
Now,
mm,
how do you take the most precious thing that you've built? No one else
mm,
gave that to you, that you
mm,
built.
mm,
And now
mm.
you must walk up to the sacrificial fire, and you must take that whole prize and you must put it on the flames and give away the every last thing
Yeah.
that you could have said, I fucking did that.
Mm. Man, that has probably been amongst the hardest things I've had to do. But one of the things that has stood out for me was really um, a very recent meditation I had, a very recent meditation session that I sat with.
Mm.
Um, I was undergoing this very question of walking the ledge and letting go of everything else that I stand for, everything that I've built myself to stand for, and
Not your
um,
integrity, not your values,
yeah,
your identity.
the identity. Yes,
Yes.
the identity of someone who talks about unlearning, the identity of someone who, you know, when I had gone through all of that change, I was in a mind space where I understood that this is the final leg of the hurdle. The hurdles never really end, but just to realize that the hurdles never really end is the enlightenment, is everything that you can attain. You will keep attaining more things also, but this is it. I can now talk about enlightenment. I can now talk about everything, everything under the sun. And to realize that that was also a small way of talking about it was hard, is still hard. But then one of the key things that turned up for me was that if everything that I've learned and I've unlearned and I've come up to so far, all the realizations, if they are meant to be of any value, they will stand the test of this sacrifice too. Like, if they cannot, they were not really the highest realizations I could have had. They were not really the the golden armor that I could have been wearing. And therefore there is something better on the other side of this sacrifice too.
Or there isn't, but if you can't roll that dice, it means that you're held back by your own fear.
Yes, my own fear, my own shame also, right? And
Talk
that's
to me
that.
about that. Talk to me about that, because
Mm,
um, shame is just such a universal human
mm,
reality that we
mm,
don't have good language to process or talk about. Or
I
talk to
think
me
I
about
don't
how
either.
somebody who is generally a good person,
Mm,
who I've never heard you say a bad word about anybody. I've never heard you play small or argue small or there's always a nobility. There's always an integrity of character. There's always a commitment to betterment and
Mm.
upliftment of other people. So, how does someone like you have a relationship with shame?
Mm. I'll say honestly, firstly, I don't feel I have the best vocabulary, the best understanding of shame, but my own relationship with it has been that shame is something that holds me back at times. It has held me back previously too. I have had examples from my own childhood too, where I would feel that now I feel that if my child was going through what I was going through, the last thing I would want is for them to be ashamed of their own experience, their own feelings, their own emotions, their own truth. I'll tell you something. Um, I had a pretty hard childhood in the middle years because we went through a terrible financial crisis in our home. A terrible one, man. I mean, three kids at home, and we didn't have any savings. We didn't have a home. We didn't have any income coming through. I
Or
don't
there
know how
wasn't
my
even a we. Your parents didn't have that, and you just helplessly inherited the reality. Yeah.
yes, exactly. I still don't know how my parents pulled it off, man. I just don't. Without any help from others, without any help from the family and the friends who were supposed to be helping but did not. I don't know how they pulled it off. It still makes me cry for everything that my dad went through. But anyhow,
And fearful and
yes, exactly.
cautious, and yeah, yeah.
Yes. And at that point, one of the key memories from that experience of my childhood is actually around shame of not having money, feeling ashamed of being
Of
of
feeling
belonging.
less than,
Yes, yes.
and feeling not only less than, but the fact that you are less than or had less than
Hmm.
is somehow a reflection of your family's character
Hmm. Yes,
or your
yes. But,
parents. Like
hmm. In general, it was something to be ashamed of. It was something to be ashamed of, and therefore you would not talk about it. You would try to find your ways around it. Like if there was a school trip happening, which would cost not too much, but my family couldn't afford it. I I was so ashamed of this fact that I would not talk about this with my friends, with
you
anyone.
developed strategies to
Circumvent the entire.
save face.
Exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
and save face in a manner which, counterintuitively enough, I feel that is what makes things worse. I have friends from childhood, my childhood, who still do not know the problems that me and my family went through back then. What the fuck do friends mean in this case? What
Yeah,
the
but
fuck
also,
does
how
that
old
mean?
were you then, man?
Um, I was
14, 15.
less than that, dude. I was 10. Started when I
Yeah,
was
but
around 10 years old.
10-year-old friends can't handle that shit. They
True, true, yeah. But, you know
If we
what?
had all lived in an initiated society,
Mm,
that would have we
maybe.
just wouldn't allow for that.
Yeah.
First of all, your parents would have been given better guidance on how to be more prudent financially, and secondly, if they fell on hard times as people do,
Mm,
um, how can we endure some families struggling more than us? We just want to make sure everyone has enough.
yeah.
Now, in Jewish community, I'm not Jewish.
Mm,
I just know this because of my teacher.
mm,
And she said there was something very special that happened in Jewish community. When somebody needed charity, you never brought it to their front door.
mm,
You brought it to their back door.
mm,
Because real charity never comes through the front door. Because that's not charity. That shames them.
mm,
It just shames them.
mm,
Because nobody wants to be the receiver of charity.
mm, 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 mm,
Giving and receiving is such an important psychological concept, such
mm.
a foundational psychological concept, that one of the reasons you didn't want to talk about it is you didn't know, and nobody was mature enough to handle that at the back door.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Do you understand?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I do, I do, I do. I really do, man.
Because
That.
we were poor as well,
Oh, really? I didn't.
and my family were not close,
Mm.
and there was a lot of emotional abuse, verbal violence, some physical violence.
mm,
Um, so I was more psychologically traumatized and traumatized in my nervous system than I ever felt abused. I never felt abused,
mm,
you know, because I had a strong sense of sovereignty. But that added to the problem because it's not as if I could even let people through the the mask or the armor to let them in because I was embarrassed of actually my family as well. I wasn't proud of them.
mm,
And then my parents also then smoked and made bad choices and did things that were now not prudent with the money as well. And so it wasn't as if even I could accept the fact that it was just bad karma. It was now you're now exacerbating your own karma because of your lack of maturity.
mm, mm,
So the shame was fucking enormous, right? Because what's
yeah,
so important to you as a young person is to be um, accepted,
that's
belong.
it.
You need to
Yeah,
belong with your group, and
yeah,
you don't actually know how to navigate that line.
yeah.
You know.
And therefore, one of the things that I realize now, and this is very recent for me. In fact, this was as recent as the trip I was on, and I was meditating on this, and I was realizing that one of the key things that was missing around that time was not really all the trauma that I was going through. It was the fact that we were in an environment where I was left to process that trauma all alone, and therefore I never really processed that trauma. Like a
Well,
child,
never
how?
adequately because you
Yeah,
faced what you could face. But if there's shame involved, it means there's a psychological incentive to brush things under the carpet and hope they disappear.
yeah, yeah.
And then believing almost that if they're not visible, they're not present anymore, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there was no one initiated around me to actually even tell me this.
No,
Of
no,
course, right? Of
no, of
course,
course there
we
wasn't,
still
right?
don't have that. We still don't have that
Yeah,
in our
yeah, yeah.
society, and therefore so that's my relationship with shame to some extent, where I would say that I still go through those phases where I'm visited by those demons in some sense,
Mm.
especially around finances, especially around money, because that's been such a massive part of my childhood that I still feel shame around that. And then, um,
Yeah, but how does that relate to the shame we were talking about, where
mm,
um, you were talking about your personal spiritual attainment or your
mm,
intellectual attainment or something like that, and that you were struggling to face that that shortcoming or that fear of we were talking about. You said you were afraid to put that identity on the flames because it was
mm,
the only thing you had ever built.
mm,
And I said,
mm,
but, and you said, well, a big part of that was shame. And I said, but what relationship, how could that trigger that quality of shame that you were talking about before?
mm,
How is it that you associate that also as shame? You know, because
mm,
it is,
mm.
and your intuition is right. But I'm curious if you understand how, or if there is any kind of similarity. And then does it mean there's two kinds of shame? You know, and it's
One
okay
of
to say I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I understand. I'm getting to one of the shames that I used to feel, especially around the first transition that I had, was the shame of admitting that um, admitting that I know better. There was a shame involved in it, in the sense that, the,
oh,
I'll tell
right.
you, I'll give you an example from my childhood. I've been a studious, a nerdy kid since I was very little, and I was the top of my class and everything. So there was no shame involved with being intelligent, but there was a shame involved with raising your hand first and saying that you knew the answer to the question that the teacher was asking. Somehow, I don't know what placed that shame in me, but to raise your hand and say that I know the answer, I used to do that very often. I used to do that, but it was always there was some level of shame involved in putting your hand up and saying that I know the answer, and that was uh,
That's
yeah.
that's the um, that's the accusation, the Christian accusation of pride. Look at you.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Look at
Look
you.
at you. You think you're something special, you know?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, exactly.
Now, where
And
did you learn that?
man, one of the experiences that is rooted in my memory is this teacher that I had who would actually punish me for raising my hand up and saying that I knew the answer, because no one else in the class would be able to answer because of me. I don't know what I would say, put that to, but this is a memory I have, a very sharp memory, that we had just
Like
started
the
in.
accusation was that you were a show off.
Yes, exactly. And I was punished for it. I was made to sit away from the class because of knowing the answer, because of saying the answer
You know, the
firstly.
irony is if one kid keeps answering and you're trying to bring the other kids into the conversation, it's as simple as saying, okay, someone other than Chetan for a second, Chetan, just cool it. I just want to hear
Huh.
if the other kids are getting this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think almost all the other teachers would have been doing that, but this one teacher who I also respect, I think he was one of the good teachers that I had, but this memory sticks with me, where he would literally punish me for putting my hand up and giving the answers. I don't know. So that's maybe that also rooted that shame in me somehow.
But somehow
Um,
that came from home, dude.
Definitely would have. Definitely would have.
Mm.
Definitely would have. It's bound to be. Um,
Because I had a shame around being the smart kid. And the shame was twofold.
mm,
The one was I had a sister, which I only realized much later in life, would have had a natural resentment towards me because she was not wanted by
oh,
our mother
I
because
get
she
that.
was the product of something called date rape.
Yes. I've read
Mm,
that in your book, Rocco. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So then she had a kind of psychological insecurity that would show up as manipulation. Subtle, just kids, you know. But
Yeah.
then aunties and uncles would kind of shame her for that.
Mm,
And I was like a golden boy.
mm,
That wounded her. And I was aware of that wounding. And so I rejected the praise
yeah.
because I didn't think it was skillful. I thought it was, I don't care how well meaning it is. All that it's doing now is causing strife between me and my sister. How is it that you adults are not noticing this? Number one. And then when the praise would come from school about how gifted I was, they wanted to put me in accelerated, gifted school
Mm,
acceleration, and I just rejected it because now I don't want it to be a fact that's now because it's all good if like I do well in this and she does well in that, but now if I'm in a different school because of
mm.
they only go to that school if you're gifted, and therefore why is the sister not there because she's not gifted like that?
Yeah.
So I
I get
couldn't
that.
do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't shame exactly, it was like a strategic response
Mm,
to something. Then an actual shame came along in where I began to realize that I was a genius.
mm,
But it's a very weird thing. You're not supposed to say that you're a genius.
mm,
I don't know why, really. I don't
mm,
really know why. If we get to the bottom of it, what is wrong with what is wrong with a genius calling themselves or recognizing their own genius? What is like?
mm,
What's the actual problem here?
mm, mm. I think it
And so
is
you
that.
can think of this a million ways. There isn't an actual problem.
Yeah.
It's just a perceived psychological problem, whereas you don't want to trigger everybody else's shame by saying that
Yeah.
you're better than them at something. But we're all better and worse at different things. But what is really the problem with somebody acknowledging one of their strengths?
Mm,
So no one around me could handle that.
mm,
So then I also then realized I was this, but then trying to get traction in relationships, especially at work, in a work context, because the implication then is if you're a genius, you must be successful.
oh man.
And
Yes.
so now, because I had this problem where no one around me is mature enough to just talk turkey or solve problems or be straightforward or honest or intellectually honest, I would I would hornlock with people. I would challenge leaders and I would challenge so called experts, but not because I was a contrarian, but because I was neurodivergent. I was autistic. I just said, no, that's wrong. This is the right way to do it. And someone would say, no, get back in your place. And I'll say, no, no, no. You're trying to raise a flag here of knowing more, and that isn't more or better. This is more or better. And if you try it, you'll see. Then we can put our egos and our dicks away. And I would just
Mm.
keep calling, and people, you can't do that, right? Especially not
Mm.
in business.
Yeah.
And so I was never successful because I was always suppressed. I couldn't do a university education because
Mm.
I would keep telling them how ridiculous it was. So I had to drop out.
Oh.
I couldn't get into leadership and management development tracks because I wouldn't play the game.
Mm.
And then I didn't become financially successful. So then I had a shame about what am I doing with my gifts? Nothing. I'm ashamed. I'm
Mm.
ashamed of public. I wasn't ashamed of my intelligence. I was ashamed at the delta, the egregious delta between, because your claim is supposed to be backed by utter success.
Yeah.
So I can understand the relationship between me and my shame, but
Mm.
yeah.
I don't
Anyway,
think I've I don't think I have processed it enough really to
yeah, yeah, yeah,
actually have that kind of a coherent understanding of my own shame and having that articulation about it. I
yeah.
don't know.
I'll
Yeah.
give you the shortcut into one of the reflections you can do. It's
Hmm.
realizing that if you had created a circumstance or an environment
Hmm.
that you would want for like your own child or your best friend, you have to admit that the conditions that you were subjected to as teachers, the way that people wielded power and authority over you was abusive. It was
Hmm.
neglectful. It was unkind. It was bad leadership, right? And
Hmm.
then you're forced to subscribe to that to get your needs met.
Hmm. Hmm.
And in subscribing to their model of authority to get your needs met, you actually sell yourself out.
Hmm.
And it's in that selling yourself out with you have to actually reject their model and say, I am bigger than your model. I am higher than your authority. That's a big claim to make. And as soon as you make that claim, now people can point at you and say, oh, you see, I knew it. He's arrogant. And but now you have to wear that culpability of arrogance and not care.
Hmm.
And not care like it doesn't affect you, but you can't let the affecting of you or the way it affects you, you can't let that undermine your self permission.
Hmm.
Now that in mystical terms is called confronting the demiurge, because somewhere deep inside in our psychology there's a gatekeeper, there's a level holder, a threshold keeper that is supposed to be there because we're humans, and humans derive their sense of meaning from connection, from belonging, from. Now, if you are rejecting the system, rejecting the authority, you are making a claim about your own kingship, a claim about your own ascendancy.
Hmm.
Now, the only model that we accept is you can either be a priest or a pandit or a merchant or a. There's ways in which we accept someone being better,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you are rejecting those.
Hmm.
We have to call you arrogant,
Hmm.
and you now have to back yourself in that.
Hmm.
You're confronted with the social price of shame without feeling personally connected to it. Because how do I transcend this model of permission without understanding what it is that is wrong with that model of permission?
Hmm. Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
why I teach understanding, because how do you do that if you can't articulate it
Hmm.
and say what better looks like? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And I do realize now that that is what I miss right now. I do miss that articulation. I do miss that
yeah.
the words to actually talk about it with myself,
Mm,
with others, perhaps,
mm,
right? With people. Again, it's down to the same thing. Like I said, we can only raise others to our own level of consciousness. And now this is the next level of my own realization that I have to walk through this cave now,
yes.
so that one of the things I can do is help others as well do
Yes.
that, right?
Yes. So we're getting. I don't care how long this goes today.
Yeah, yeah.
No one watches. They don't watch. C'est la vie.
You don't care about the
What
millions and millions of people, Rocco?
I do, but I think we're going to attract 5 or 10 that are going to care. And if they
Yeah,
care, they'll care.
yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you was, part of this journey now, you put yourself through your first initiation,
Hmm.
the first awakening, let's call it.
Yeah.
And at some point, I start sharing knowledge and information and maps and models, and it takes me a long time to break through to you, because the thing that takes the longest time is, it's a bit like when I said before, you think everyone's on your project and you're just trying to lift them up to your project. And then you
Mm.
realize later, oh shit, everyone's kind of on their own project, or
Mm.
they're on a different phase, and they don't respond. They don't intuit the
Mm.
same way you do. And you kind of have to, oh shit, like that's a realization.
Mm.
So that was one of the reasons, is that you were just on a different arc, different trajectory, different stage of a
Mm.
similar journey. The
Mm.
second thing was, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
The, and the third thing is, yeah, it's related to the second. You don't know what you don't know, and so you can't tell that there's a there there.
Exactly. Or even if I can tell there's a there there, I cannot tell that um, um, someone else is there. How do I
Really?
identify? I mean, no, I would say that I can realize that this guy, um, like I respect this guy
Ah,
more.
this guy's ahead, but I can't tell if it's a mile. I can't tell if it's a river or an ocean.
Yeah, yeah, that's one way to put it. Really, yes. I
Yes.
don't know. I don't know
How?
how far
Yeah.
along in the journey
Is
is
that a
this.
puddle? Is that a
Mm,
river, or is that an ocean?
yeah, yeah.
And did you? And you? What do you? I suppose you just assume it's a puddle
Mm, I don't know. I.
because there was a degree of delusion, and I don't
Mm,
mean that in a disparaging sense, but the delusion in the sense that we were playing jujitsu, but you had no idea of the size of the game we were playing while we were playing it.
yeah,
Because
because
you're not a stupid guy. Like you really understood some shit, but then I'd give teachings and give examples, and then you'd go, yeah, and I could see that you're getting it, but
mm,
like there was some way that wasn't landing, and I was going like, what the fuck, man? But then I just realized, this is a ripeness thing. There's just a ripeness that's happening here, and there's an alchemy that's happening in Chetan. There's a just like you can't rush that shit.
you know what, man. One of the
Mm.
things that I want to say is that the non-dual project and the Advait Vedant project that had me hooked, that has me hooked, that I derived a lot of my understandings from, is in some sense such a overarching, exhaustive project that you can almost take up anything that anyone has to say and look at it from this lens and just absorb it into it, and you still feel that the non-dual project is the highest level of attainment because everything gets absorbed within it. Everything,
Wow,
right?
that's it, huh?
Yeah, so I would feel that I can also encapsulate everything that you are saying in here. I just can, and I was able to. I'm still able to.
But the
Bec-
irony is it diminishes it actually.
it diminishes
Can we
your.
talk about that? Because that's a really good point, and I don't think
Hmm,
people will understand. So just let,
hmm,
let everybody remember what the first of all, non-dualism basically says that the only form of true spiritual fulfillment is the release of the illusion of self. It's where
yes.
you realize we're all actually one, and everything that you're holding onto that's synonymous with ego or I or identity or attainment or achievement is all meaningless.
Yes, or
Right.
meaningful only to a certain degree, and
Yeah.
after that, the highest realization would be the highest fulfillment or meaning would be only achieved if you let go of that self, if
Correct.
if you dissolve it,
Transcend.
if you transcend the self.
Yes.
Yes,
Now,
yes.
Advaita Vedanta is slightly nuanced insofar as it says that highest attainment is the realization of true self.
Hmm.
Capital T, capital S, true self. And true self is Atman, the knowing beyond object subject. It's
Hmm.
just like a pure form of recognition, pure form
Hmm.
of knowing. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Now, there's
yes,
different
yes.
projects. There's Mahamudra, there's Zen, there's
Hmm.
Dzogchen, there's Advaita Vedanta. That kind of all fall under the non-dual, but Advaita Vedanta is unique because it still admits of a property of selfhood that you can resonate and identify with, but none of that is about corporeal meaning. None of it is
Corporeal.
about meaning here in the world.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's all about a
Yes.
transcendent form of
Hmm.
meaning
Hmm. Hmm.
that
Hmm.
that makes this all an illusion, nothing more than a dream.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's where I was. That's where I was, and I would, um, the the peace that gave me, the um, the
The hope,
belongingness, the hope and the
the spiritual
belongingness.
hope, like, oh, this is going to be okay because.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and the entire idea of this is it, and I belong. I have always belonged. I just forgot. Resonated with my idea of unlearning, because I had subscribed to an idea of belonging, which was given to me by my conditioning, and that was all ignorant conditioning. And therefore,
Mm.
now that I belong, this is it. And that was the umbrella, that was the encapsulation with which I
Oh,
was looking
wow.
at everything,
So I
right?
call that a framing, and it's
Hmm.
actually, in some sense, a limiting framing, ironically.
Exactly. And I did not realize that at all. And even when I encountered you, I could see that everything you're saying is true, but I would limit it to that encapsulation of non-dualism.
You were trying to put it in that framing.
Exactly. And I was able to do it properly because I understood,
And they're
and
congruent.
and they're
The problem
congruent.
is
Exactly.
they're congruent. So it looks, you go, oh, yes, your Lego fits into my Lego. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yes, exactly. And that's where I was always. That's where I was always, because um, y- also
And that took a
you
long time to get unstuck, even when I shared you that middle path.
actually, that was when I realized that this is something new, dude. I remember we were in the middle of a conversation actually, and we realized that, oh man, this is something different. Like, I didn't realize. I honestly didn't realize that there were three paths. I didn't realize that what we were talking about all this while was the middle path,
Oh,
and
we were
it's
talking about consciousness, and I said there's not
yes,
only one there.
yes, yes.
That's it. That's
That's
it.
it. And that's what actually
Wow.
triggered it for me, where I realized that, dude, I perhaps I've been looking at this in a convoluted lens, and I need to shift that framing again. And that was the hardest bit, man. It still is, honestly, because I respect the non-dual project, the entire understanding that I've had via that project so much, that there is another level of
Self permission required to not reject it, but transcend it. Yeah.
yes, exactly. Because, of course, the idea that you are sharing is congruent with it. Because if it's not congruent with it, how
It
can it
wouldn't be truth.
improve on it? It
Yes.
wouldn't be the truth. And
Yes.
how will it improve upon it? But
Yes.
I can understand that it is improving upon it, and I think that's where I am right now.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes. Christ, is fascinating, isn't it? You
mm,
know, there's this thing that I wanted to share with you.
mm,
It's, I don't know whether folks will understand it, but when I show you this now, I
mm,
believe your appreciation of this will change,
mm,
or you'll recognize that.
mm, mm. You've described this to me, yes, Rocco. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the three paths,
Mm,
and then you almost have to turn them on their head
mm,
and invert them and realize that that then becomes this, and then inside that there's another one, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on.
mm.
That's just a forever invitation. Yeah.
It's a forever invitation.
And it's the eternal golden apex. It's There's
Mm,
always a transcendent perspective. There's always a better way.
mm,
There's always something higher. There's always the way that the truth curves away from us over a event horizon that we can only see more of the closer we get, and then that never converges completely.
mm,
And it's not that there's no there. It's that the there is Rama. It's this unattainable perfection that we're always going to be aiming towards forever and forever and forever and forever. But you can actually only do that. There's
mm,
two kinds of achieving of that. The one is letting go of the
mm,
holding of the anchor of one of those points in that triangle, where it's like,
mm,
I don't have a perspective here. The only
mm,
point that I have a perspective, the only way that this thing could be a receding curve is if I have relativity. And I can only have relativity if I am a unique perspective in this
mm,
arrangement. If I
mm,
release that and merge with all of consciousness, I just see the pattern. And I don't
mm,
just see the pattern, there is just the pattern.
mm, mm,
And
mm,
it's
mm,
fractal forever this way and fractal forever that way. And that fractality, that eternity, that infiniteness is the wholeness, the true selfhood. Because I'm
mm,
also that thing inside of me. I'm
mm.
also, that's the trick of the Atman, the self, is that
Yeah.
I'm also infinite.
Yeah.
but it's not an infinite wherein when you and I say something is infinite, there's a part of our mind that nags to find, oh my God, then how am I going to find the end and the bottom? Something
Mm.
is wrong with infinite
Mm. Mm. Mm.
because
Mm.
as a self, infinitude to a finite thing is it breaks safety, it breaks coherence, it breaks the brain.
Mm.
And so leadership is always a way of embracing paradox.
Mm.
And it's not just holding this impossible tension, it's recognizing that impossible tension corresponding also inside yourself,
Mm.
whilst being okay that you are one of those anchor points in that eternally twisting triangle.
Mm.
That part of my truth is there, but part of my truth is also the whole thing.
Yeah. 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 That's it.
And
Mm. Mm. Mm.
it's hard
Mm.
to talk to when you're not high, but and to
Mm.
put into plain English. But those
Uh,
three dots, they speak about that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I get you.
Now, when you think of Advaita Vedanta, there's no such thing.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
There's only yin yang. There's only the all. There's only transcendence.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
transcendence itself is not defined as steps. It's just a now
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but there is no coming back from that because there's no self to inhabit to respond to that. That's why some people, when they respond, when they report on enlightenment, like in Zen, they just say the aim is to reach enlightenment and then carry on with your life.
Yeah. That's where I felt I was, honestly. I used to
Sure,
feel. eh, eh,
and you were,
Mm. Mm.
but um, the irony is you can't actualize from that place.
Hmm. You can't. For me personally, I used to always keep feeling, and I still keep feeling. You remember that meme of a little girl who's sitting on a swing? She's swinging by very happily on that swing, and there's a house burning in the background.
And she says,
Eh,
"This is fine."
Yes, it always used to trigger me, man, and it still does because it appeals to a
Oh, I
part
see
of
what
me.
you mean. Because if
Yeah,
you subscribe to that non-dual tradition, then you have to ignore the suffering in the world, and you have to make up a story about it.
make up a story about it. That's it. You make up a story
Oh
about
no,
it in
don't
that.
worry, it's all will
It's
be
all
okay in the
fine.
end, and
Yeah,
this is all an
exactly.
illusion. And I just go, dude, I can't.
Yes, and I used to be able to make absolute peace with it. I really did. I used to
Hmm.
feel that not only is it just gonna be okay, it's already okay. It's already a part of the divine plan, and
And
it
in a
is
sense, it is.
exactly that. In a sense, it is, but me feeling not okay with the house burning is also a part of the fucking divine plan, man. I didn't put it in
Yes,
myself, right?
yes,
And if I'm feeling that I want to put out the fire, perhaps that is how the fire is always put out. That's how the Moanas and the what was the name of that guy,
exactly.
right?
That's
That
how the
that's
heroes step up and do
exactly.
heroic things because they
Yeah.
feel called to respond.
Exactly, right? And that's also
Mm.
part of the divine plan. And to ignore that is to ignore the divine plan then. And that was the paradox that I feel that was the next cave that I have to cross out of, that I'm still navigating through. And that's the actualization project, really. Because if that is not the actualization that our soul is after, what is? Is it really just to um, get richer and have more luxury in life? It's going to be a part of it, of course, because you want to lead a comfortable life, but you want to have more meaning and more uniqueness and more purpose, more a higher purpose, a higher achievement to your actualization project. You want to ascribe to the biggest project that you want to ascribe to, that you can ascribe to. And that's where I am right now. I feel that what we are building in a better way is really the biggest project that I can think of. I still don't know how we'll actualize it. I still don't know how I will contribute to the project, but fuck man, I want to figure that out. If
Yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
right.
So to
Mm,
that end, I suppose here's the question for you now:
mm,
is um, people will be listening and they will not know. Like, let me just speak frankly here,
mm,
in a way that I haven't even done so before. I'm stuck believing. I'm stuck believing this. Like I don't walk around with my like, look at me, look at me. Like I'm stuck with this reality, this perspective, this understanding that there are no men like me. There are no messengers, and if they are, I don't know how to find them. But when I do find them, they will sound a lot like this. They will say the same things. They will care about the same things. And I've heard these inklings in people. But the problem is a lot of people lack the self permission, or they don't want to judge, or they don't want to look at something as beautiful as Buddhism or Taoism or any of the isms and say that there is a limit there.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
have the courage to say that. And I'm not saying it because I'm a contrarian. I'm saying it because I'm looking at that and I'm realizing a case of someone like you, and I'm realizing we are not going to get through this. The house is not going to get put out of being on fire through thinking that someone else is coming, or that the great Tao will just, it's all going to be okay in the end. And there's an apathy to that. That
There's an
if we
apathy.
don't wake up from that apathy and we don't transcend our current models of permission and wisdom, even if we don't realize that there's limits to these things, what did we think they were going to be forever? It's insane.
Mm.
So I'm realizing now that I'm in a unique position to offer philosophy, pointing of the way, safeguarding of the way, transmission of the way. And the biggest problem is that it doesn't suit the project me promoting myself. It needs to be promoted by testimony from someone like you. So what I'm looking for, not selfishly, but just pragmatically, this is what the project needs. The project needs you to describe how big you thought the game was, how enormous you realize the game is now, how nothing of meaning was lost, but meaning was deepened, how you read all of my books and all of my work and you understood it, but it's almost like there wasn't a depth enough in your resonance chamber inside your guitar that when
Mm.
that chord was played, there was, your cup was like this, and now it's like this.
Mm.
And now what you thought you understood is blowing you away, even though you were already familiar with the work and the pictures and the models and the language.
Mm.
And that now you've actually put your hand up and said, shit, I actually need a proper education here. I actually need to formalize my education, without which I can't even really play this game. Like I'm still an amateur almost until I get this education under my belt.
Mm. 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 Mm.
I think that needs to be a part of your video journey going forward. It can't be me prompting you, but if people don't get that,
Mm.
there's something not just exceptional, but exceptional and profoundly necessary. And we're not going to get another chance at this. Or even if we are, what are you splitting hairs about?
I realize that, Rocco. Yeah.
Like, fuck, if this isn't what the end game looks like, how must it get now before your concerns about what a teacher or a guru should look like? And then also, if you think, like, this is my argument, we're never going to get another Jesus, we're never going to get another Buddha. We're going to get other kinds of solutions that are adaptable to this time. I'm part of that solution. I don't know how many other people are part of that solution, but I can't wait around to find out. And I have to act as imperfect as I am, like maybe those other ones are waiting for me to give them the signal or call them or ask them to come and help, or I don't know. I don't know. But I'm not perfect. I'm not an enlightened Buddha. I don't have infinite stillness and gentleness. I'm not that guy. I'm a man I'm a human fucking being who understands shit. And I understand it so well that if you take the time to understand it, we can fix all of this. That's it. It's an important message for mankind, and I need help, and it needs to be taken seriously. And the biggest problem that you've got, you and a million other people, and I don't just mean you, Chet, and like you got through that problem, was that we've got such a bug up our asses about somebody who's a guru or a teacher or some form of like world messenger they now need to also be a perfect soul.
Hmm.
I'm not a perfect soul. I'm not going to pretend to be. I don't like the idea of it. I don't want to be on a pedestal. I just couldn't care less. But we need to grow up out of the idea that people with excellent ideas need to be superhuman people.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, I don't know how to talk about that massive delta between what people expect and the value of my gift, because they're never going to meet.
Hmm.
And the problem is you. The reason people needed to be perfect, and Jesus needed to be perfect, or Buddha needed to be perfect, or JK needed to be infinitely gentle and non prescriptive, was that's the only way people could subscribe to that if there was no shadow of an ego there.
Hmm.
But the thing is, I'm not trying to get us to kill our egos. I'm trying to
That.
get us to heal and mature our egos, because you actually need an ego. You need to be a real person in this world.
Hmm.
If you want to be an elder, a spiritual elder in your village, in your family, when the wrong thing happens, you need to have teeth. You need to be able to have some flex and muscle and sinew to say, no, I'm standing against it. How can
Yeah.
you do that without an ego?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. A village needs to have an ego. They need to have a sense of identity. They need to care about being a self that continues. How
Hmm.
can you do that without an ego? Right. We need to outgrow that limitation of project.
Hmm.
And I don't know what the perfect way is, but I know that I can't talk about it.
I
You
think we
know?
made some progress today, though, Rocco.
No, 100%. I don't.
Yeah.
This is not an argument against
Hmm.
that. This is.
Hmm.
It's becoming clear to me that this is now a necessity.
Yeah. I, and I'm with
Yeah.
you on that, Rocco. I'm
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
on that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is one level of, again, shame is a word that's coming up for me. There is
Reluctance.
reluctance, definitely, dude. I think that's a better word. A reluctance to, again, putting putting my identity, the one that I had built for myself, putting it on the sacrificial fire again, and with that understanding of if it was worth anything at all, it has to
Endure that level of sacrifice.
yes, yes,
Surrender. That level of surrender. Yeah.
that level of surrender. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. I think we made that bit about how non-duality, even though it was the the best thing that happened to me, it was also the most limiting thing that was keeping me still small in this very cave, and I wasn't really
It's
able
going to be
to.
very hard for a lot of people to face.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
such a beautiful answer? And the thing is, it doesn't make that answer not true. What I'm saying is there's two kinds of souls in this world.
Hmm.
One kind of soul, its dharmic fulfillment is that.
Yeah.
So you must imagine this is all a battery, and some of the particles, the ions, are going to go to the negative terminal, and some of them to the positive terminal. And it just needs to balance itself out. There needs to
Hmm.
be enough souls and consciousness filtering that way. And they also need to be the substrate. And not everybody needs to actualize super duper.
Hmm.
Sometimes their form of actualization is just to be the connective tissue in a family, in a society, in
Yeah.
a village. And so we're not saying that the only form of spiritual there is to become like a hermetic supermensch. Just being initiated and being part of the connective tissue with that level of integrated knowledge and integrated understanding. You don't even have to do anything amazing with that. Just the normal traditions and events in the calendar that we observe, just participating in that and welcoming children in and normalizing this healthy way is a form of actualization. That is some
Hmm.
people's dharma.
Yeah.
That's why dharma is so important. Now, the
Hmm.
irony was you were getting to the point where you were not honoring your own dharma for lack of self permission, because you didn't have a pathway and language and a paradigm. Now, the value of a teacher or a guru shouldn't be to take refuge in, like Ram Dass took refuge in his teacher. That is a model. We're
Hmm.
prescribing a slightly different model. I'm not that kind of guru or teacher. I'm a different thing. I'm a messenger.
Mm.
I'm a hierophant. I'm holding a line. I'm telling you there's a threshold. And I'm saying that all thresholds have a sameness to them. It requires us to confront ourselves and our sense of self permission and to be introduced to a higher order of sense making wherein we can derive our self permission and then guiding us to and across that threshold in ways that we can inhabit that and belong to that and integrate that as our new baseline so
Mm.
that we can keep climbing upwards.
Mm.
That is a forever journey. There's no one threshold to cross. But the first threshold that you've now been through is the fundamental initiation where you've realized this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
And one of the ways, go on, you finish,
no,
Rocco.
no, go.
I was one of the ways in which I make sense of it really is the idea of being and becoming, and how we are taught when we are thinking about our own actualization, our own purpose in life, we are only taught to think about the becoming part, in the sense that I want to become an engineer, I want to become this guy, I want to become this person. And the being part, which is what guides our becomings, which is what guides our meanings and fulfillments that we look forward to, that is the sort of the fucked up part in our society right now, which this aims to correct really. And I feel for me personally, the non-dual project corrected that being part, but it left out the becoming part. It almost just left
Oh,
it
I
out
didn't
because
even have a answer for that part of the project.
yeah, because it just felt like the becoming is the problem. Like you want to become something away from the project. No, the divine plan is already there. It's all already set, and all you have to do is align to being. And I respect that project. Like you say, there is a kind of soul that belongs to that project, to that level
And
of
it
surrender.
has to be part of our foundation as well. Practicing
Yes,
surrender, practicing
yes,
mindfulness, practicing.
yes,
We're not
yes,
going to
yes,
get by without that. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Hmm. I get that, man. Yeah, man. Do you have anything else also that you want to talk about, Rocco? Any other question that you still want
No,
to
no,
put me
no,
through?
because I really just wanted to get a sense, a reflection of. I wanted you to open up and just process that
Hmm. Hmm.
because, like I said, I learn what I think as I hear myself speak. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and we're
Hmm.
so afraid of words. We're afraid of the context of a guru
Hmm.
because we think that
Oh.
that means we have to submit our agency. And the
Hmm.
irony is, I'm advocating the exact
The
opposite.
exact opposite. Yeah.
I'm advocating inheriting your agency, but also becoming the kind of operator that can steward and manage that agency well
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
in a
Hmm.
skillful, aligned way, aligned with your own dharma. Now that this is the problem. We've got a million people, books, none of them the same, in the same order, coming from different intuitions with some exposure to non-dualism, some without, different spiritual framings, and unaware of the whole human game that we're participating in and what is possible and by what mechanics we award ourselves permission. And like if you want to play martial arts but you can't figure out which one is better
Hmm.
for which kind of project, how can you say that this one's blue belt beats that one's? So who do I listen to?
Yeah.
Now, not knowing any of that, I've got Huberman and Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson and Chris Wilkinson and
Hmm.
JK and Osho, and I've got this big mess in my head, and I'm now not actualizing and I'm not being part of the global solution.
Hmm.
And then I look to who the problem is and I assume the problem is me because I don't know how. How are you going to know how? How
Yeah.
do you, on what basis are you sorting all of that confusion out?
Yeah.
We're not meant to do this on our own. We're meant to get a very specific kind of help. The problem is we don't even have a quorum of adults that have normalized this idea by which to help welcome new arrivals, like that poem I sent you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't even
Yeah.
know how to welcome you because your first welcome shouldn't have been it should have been a kind of
Comfort.
a comforting, like
Hmm.
this dude, you've just woken up in this horrible place. It's terrible.
Hmm.
There's no good news here. But the good news is this is the way.
Hmm.
Let me first, and you help me now. Let's be gentle with your awakening soul and your awakening consciousness. Then let's realize that after that crib, there's a childhood. We begin playing, but there's going to be an adolescence, and then there's going to be
Hmm. Hmm.
there's a
Those
process here,
exchanges. Yeah.
you know,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
that's guided by the golden rule. What would I want, and by dharma and by
Hmm.
understanding. Yeah, but it's such a specific education
Hmm.
that I can't wait anymore to start transmitting that education. I have to just formalize that and start telling people this is what you need to know. I
Yeah.
don't care anymore if you like it or don't like it or who you think I am or
Hmm. And that is something which I feel appeals to me personally also, because this is unique, Rocco. We have, like I was in Bali just 10 days back, in fact 3, 4, 5 days back. There is a version of spirituality in Bali which is very appealing, very appealing, but there is no coherence. Like it's just another version of spirituality you would find online too. And something that I was meditating on when I was there was, I want a better way. I really want a better way to be an overarching, unique project in the world which can help provide more coherence to all of these projects. And you have touched upon that beautifully, where you say, compare it to all the different forms of martial arts that you have out there. And how do you choose which one you can subscribe to if you do not even understand the
mm,
entire game to begin with, the entire game of
yeah,
martial arts to begin with?
yeah.
you know, it it actually reminds me of that one meme where someone says, "I don't know any martial arts. I'm actually a black belt in partial arts." And that's actually what's happening in the world right now,
I
right? If
know,
you
but
think
we've
about
got
it.
9 billion people, or not 9 billion, let's say there's about half a billion people that are variously subscribed to some sort of spiritual project or
Yeah.
project of enlightenment or becoming. There's no two that are the fucking same.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the irony is, I'm not just saying, oh, I've got a better idea. I'm saying, let me tell you about a universal theory of everything. Let me tell you about hermetics. Let me tell you what this might mean and might sound like if we washed it clean of all of our superstitious bullshit. Let
Hmm.
me tell you how this is congruent with Buddhism and where the overlap is and what falls outside of that overlap. What is to be paid attention to, what is to be venerated, what is to be separated out. Let me show you the congruence with Advaita Vedanta, with Vedic philosophy, with Mahabharata, with Bhagavad Gita, with a
Hmm.
million things.
Hmm. Hmm.
If there
Hmm.
is any truth to be found, it must transcend any of these schools.
Hmm.
The question is not just to understand that. Hey, Morgan, I'm glad that you came and are listening to us jabbering away here. Excellent. It's not just that we uh, accept this abstract conceptual idea that there's a higher there, is that there's actually a way to begin to articulate that and to sense make that so you can find out how this is fundamental to the coherence of the operating system of the universe. And that if there's any intractability, any question, any challenge that you encounter, you just apply the same logic and you go, oh, there must be a transcendent third perspective. If
Hmm.
I assume that's the case, I'm always looking for it, and then everybody in the team knows that's what we're doing. All you're
Hmm.
ever going to do is just keep iterating towards better.
Hmm. Hmm.
Even on a meta level where you realize that too much change is not better. There
Hmm.
is something to be said for stability. So that even if there is a better way, there's such a thing as change fatigue, or people also
Hmm.
just need to integrate and
Hmm.
like make this solution land, and then we'll move on to the next piece. Yeah.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
There's answers to all of these things that are non arbitrary, that can be proven, and they can be proven to resonate and align with universal principles. But we don't even know what these universal principles are, because when we get told what hermetics is, we think it's just another form of mystical bullshit.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
99.999% of everything you'll encounter on the internet about hermetics is a confused subscription to that old model.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a complicated project, and then some people are coming and saying, oh my God, why is this so complex? Can't you just say it simply? Fuck, I'm trying. I am fucking trying here, but guess what?
Mm.
We are complex.
Yeah.
You know.
Say that quote about simplicity again, Rocco.
You mean the one where
For the simplicity
for
on
the
this side of
simplicity on the near side of complexity, I wouldn't give a fig. But
Mm.
for the simplicity on the far side of complexity, for that, I would give everything.
Yeah.
Because that is the only simplicity that we actually want to subscribe to. It's the one that transcends and encapsulates and subsumes all the
Yeah.
complexity, not the one
Yes.
that denies it,
Yes. Exactly.
bypasses it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bypass. Bypass. Spiritual bypass is the word really for so many
Well, it's
people.
intellectual bypass, spiritual
Mm.
bypass, moral bypass, because
Yeah.
to hand it off to Jesus or to God or to anything else is also a form of bypass.
Yeah.
Karmic bypass.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
not me. Something else will just deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh well.
Mm. This was good, Rocco. Thank you. Thank you for dragging me into this live, dude. Really. Thank you.
I knew this was necessary, man.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
I knew it was necessary.
Mm. You know, one of the things I did in Bali was I took this sound healing meditation thing, a 1.5 hour session
Yeah.
uh, in a place called the Pyramids of Chi in Ubud. It's a beautiful
Ooh,
place.
nice.
It's a beautiful place,
I'd
and
love to operate there, man. Jeez.
yeah, you know, the facilitator who actually guided me through the session, it was a group session. The facilitator is actually an Australian. He is from Sydney, lives in Bali now. And I ended up speaking to him a bit about a better way at the end of the session. And I told him,
What's his
in
name?
fact, his name was,
Tim.
no, Jordan. Jordan was the name. His Instagram account is Deep Healing Earth, something like that. I did message him. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
asked
yeah.
him because he he played so many different kinds of music there in that meditation practice that I told him about you. I told him about the sound meditation that I've been doing lately, and I asked him if he was on Spotify, if I could actually find him there, and if he can actually transmit this meditation experience online as well, because not everyone will come to Bali and pay 2000 INR or whatever money, to actually go through this meditation. And he said that he has been receiving this from a lot of people and maybe he will do it. I did leave him a note that if he wants to collaborate, we are looking for people like him in a better way. Like,
Did
I
he
think,
take you seriously or did he just humor you?
I'm not sure. How will I know? I mean, the vibe
You
of
start
him.
you start telling, man. Sometimes people just don't want to be impolite, but they.
Yeah, he wasn't that kind of a guy. I mean, that conversation there, he was vibing with me, and I could see that he wanted to know. So he asked me, drop me a note and tell me a bit more about what A Better Way stands for. And I told him I'll forward you the trailer. We have a 3-4 minute video where we talk about specifically what we stand for, and we can take it from there. I dropped him a message on Instagram. He hasn't replied yet,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I mean, we do have you for the sound project, the epic project that we want to live in a
Yeah,
better
but I'm
way.
not a
But
musician, and there's something to be
hmm,
said for people that can do shit like that live, man. It's so
yeah,
amazing. I mean, I
yeah,
met a couple of people here. The thing is, they're not very, they're very wary of the kind of philosophical claims we're making here.
hmm, hmm,
Yeah,
hmm, 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 hmm.
and yeah, we just need to start the ball rolling, man.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
okay.
All right,
Look, I
Rocco.
think we'll have a couple more of these chats as well. But there's a lot
Hmm,
that happened while you were away. I mean, I've had my own fucking
hmm,
feels like a month while you were away.
hmm, 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 hmm,
So
hmm,
much
hmm,
happened, so much realization in me that we haven't even touched that I actually wanted
hmm.
to touch. But I think this is energetically, I'm kind of feeling this is a good break point.
Yes, yes, yeah. And we'll talk about your realizations too, perhaps in a live call as well, perhaps the next live call, maybe. But yeah, let's get in touch after this call too. Huh? Okay. We'll thank, yes, we'll do the head rolls and we'll thank the millions and millions of people who joined us live
And
for
this
this
hand thing
amazing.
as well that Indians do.
Oh man, this is landing on me so much now that I have this head movement, and it's
You
the
don't do
Indian
it a lot
thing.
on videos, but like when you're in work or when you're in serious conversation mode, you don't realize
Mm.
it, and you just go,
Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah.
like where I would go, yeah, totally. I mean, I do that all the time. If that was the awkward social cue, That would be
Uh,
funny, but now no one
uh,
notices that because it's more subscribed. But in India, everyone's doing like,
oh
yeah, no,
man.
I totally get it, and I understand what the psychological language is. It's saying, yeah, man, I've got no problem with that. Yeah, I'm on board. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've checked the left and the right side of my brains. Yep, yep, yep. Isn't it?
And I add to that the Indian accent, and it just keeps making it more and more funny. You do a good one there. You do a good one there. Oh, crazy.
Dude, adolescence, the algorithm,
Algorithm. Oh,
algorithm, and adolescence. These adolescents, goddamn, you fool! Don't you realize there is this dangerous algorithm which is subsuming your conscious intentionality?
oh man. Shit. I told you about Russell Peters, right? This guy,
I know Russell Peters.
right?
Yes, yeah.
His main thing was the Indian accent, and he had his friends had him worried that when he goes to India and does the Indian accent, these guys won't laugh because they're probably going to be offended. And he says the Indians laughed more
They
at the
laugh
Indian
more.
accent. Yeah, he says because they feel that they are not the ones who have that accent. This is some Indian dude shaking his head around in US somewhere who has that accent, and they can laugh at them. They don't.
Yeah, dude. The thing is, at least you've got close to 1 billion people
Ah,
who are all in that same funny club with you. South Africans have got about 60 million, well, no,
mm,
and of that, the white sort of European
mm,
South Africans with the that accent will be
mm,
only a small percentage of that again. So we're in a very
mm,
small club.
mm,
Now, I
mm,
don't
mm.
have a strong South African accent, but a strong South African accent is cringe-worthy. It is so fucking bad in the turns of phrase and the way that they talk. Man,
Okay.
oh, bro, I listen to that and I just like, oh,
Give me a
ouch.
little of it, Rocco. I am not aware of this, honestly.
So
Give me a little.
they talk like that. They chat, and this was a great video. I just wanted to share to everybody like how good this was, because everybody liked to be a little bit spiritual and like to talk about consciousness and that kind of thing. Dude, it's bad.
Oh
It's
shit,
bad.
man.
And then
Oh,
there's
Rocco.
different kinds. There's actually a South African Indian accent. There's a South
Oh,
African Malay accent.
uh,
This
okay.
is South African Malay. They talk like this. Ek is Jay Jason Moore. Ek fucking bliksem yo. Jay like sadang was stunk me, bro. They speak like that. The South African Indian, he talks like, hey man, I'm gonna rev my car, I'm gonna spin the wheels there, I'm gonna single-handedly change the weather report from sunny to overcast. My neighbor's got a dog, he slid a shit on the top step of the neighbor's pool there. It wasn't Currymore, it was Dogmore and all.
Oh
That's how
god.
they speak.
Oh fuck. Oh
And
man.
then there's the Afrikaans
Hmm.
accent, and then there's the Cape Town. They like the Californians of South Africa. Hey, they're super relaxed and chill, my bro, like that. There's
Hmm.
different accents from different places, but they all sound so fucking funny, man.
Oh man. Rocco, you reminded me of this one video I watched. This was so funny. There was an African dude, and he wanted to say the
Oh, then
quote.
there's the black accents are so funny, dude.
Hmm. I think that was the guy that I'm talking about was a black guy, an African guy, and he wanted
Was
to
he
say the
counting
quote.
numbers?
No, he wanted to say the quote, "Don't judge a book by its cover," and he just couldn't get through it. He said, "Don't cover the book. Don't judge
But he
the
didn't give
cover."
up. He just kept
He
going.
he just kept going, and in the end, he just said, "Whatever, man. Just don't do it. Just don't do it."
There's one.
Oh.
There's one where a guy was. He was like the Donald Trump equivalent of South African presidents. So he was a black president, but he wasn't very sophisticated. And
Hmm,
there's some incredible sophisticated operators that have been
hmm,
predecessors of his, like Thabo
hmm,
Mbeki, a
hmm,
very eloquent statesman, Nelson Mandela,
hmm,
highly
hmm,
educated lawyer, humanitarian, just incredible human beings. He was not one of them. He was a
hmm,
lot more like Trump.
hmm.
And he was trying to sound smart in a room full of smart people, and he was reading a speech, and the speech was supposed to say, in the
Oh,
beginning, right?
I have watched that.
You've seen this
Yeah.
one,
Yes.
in the
Beginning.
beginning. And then he steps through it for himself, but he still fucks himself up as he steps through it. So he goes, in their beninging. In their beninging. In their beninging. Ah, to in the front of that, ne? In their beninging. He also couldn't read numbers, like
Okay.
675,321. That's complex.
Mm, mm, mm.
673,157,100 But this is a politician talking at the world stage. I just want to fucking crack up.
Oh fuck,
Yeah.
man. Oh, oh, oh man.
And
I
then all
hope.
of this is, of course, deeply politically incorrect. But aren't you so glad
Mm,
that one of the silver linings of a Trump presidency is that decorum is so violated now
mm,
that these kind of jokes are banal again.
mm.
You know, when woke fever took over, just to make it clear, we're not suggesting that anyone that anyone who feels like a marginalized minority should not have a sense of identity or a sense of voice or a sense of dignity. That's not the argument.
Mm.
But the way that the woke movement attempted to enshrine and protect that got it very wrong. They were tone deaf. It was thought policing.
Yeah, they took it
Yeah,
to the
and you
other
couldn't
extreme.
say anything, and you can't even misgender someone or get their pronouns right. And honestly, I don't have much tolerance for that. I have compassion for people who that's their reality, but
Mm,
then don't come and then tell me now what I should be ashamed of because I can't track all of that constantly in motion minutia.
yeah.
Dude, I'm gonna try and get there as quick as I can, but if I get it wrong, Jesus fucking Christ, man,
Mm,
like there's
mm,
bigger
mm,
problems in this world.
mm,
And now that the level of shit that he's breaking, like the social norms that he's kicking over and just fucking
mm.
abusing, right? Now you can make these jokes again.
Yeah. That is a silver lining for sure.
It is. It's
Mm,
not the way I wanted us to get here,
yeah.
but sadly, if we're uninitiated and we're not aware of the game that we're playing,
Mm,
the pendulum has to overswing
yeah.
for us to go, oh, that's too far. Oh, that's too far. Oh, that's
Mm,
too far. And the problem is the political parties on either side, the left in America, cannot admit that their excesses of driving identity politics and political correctness
mm.
empowered the crazy shit that we got. Like the pendulum went too far.
Yeah.
So now it has to go too
It
far.
has. Yeah.
Now the right, when eventually the left pull that back, are not going to be able to admit that a fucking Nazi salute and a man with a chainsaw on stage and somebody who accepts golden jets from the Saudis, like this is
Mm,
all fucked.
mm.
They won't be able to admit that that's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what's gonna happen?
Mm,
Eventually, the momentum of the pendulum, like when a child is on a swing, they
mm,
want to swing higher and higher and higher.
mm,
There's a fantasy that they want to go around the top,
mm, 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 mm,
but there's no speed that you can get on a swing at the park where you can go around the top. You'll get
mm.
to the top and then you'll crash straight down and bash your
Yeah.
head on the pole.
Mm,
That's what's going to happen.
mm,
And we're building towards that crescendo. And if you can't notice that, wow,
mm, mm.
fuck, you're in for a horrible surprise. Anyway.
That
Okay, dude.
that's in one essence that message in the movie. Don't look up. The
Yeah, it gets to a point of no return, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we're well into that. So
Mm,
now we're not going to avoid it now. Now we're just trying to help manage people manage their own sanity and coherence by recognizing and being able to name and process what they're actually participating in. Yeah.
mm,
Anyway.
mm.
All right, man.
Okay, Rocco, this was
Yeah.
good. This was good, and that's an understatement. That's an
Straight talk,
understatement.
bro.
Yeah,
No AI.
straight talk. Yeah, no, yeah, yes. All right, man. Thank you, Rocco. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. And yes, we'll be back with some good jokes about the Indian African accent too. I don't think I'm good at it,
No.
dude. No, that's also true.
Thanks, Morgan.
Yeah, thanks, Yash. Yash was the one who joined in
Oh,
in
excellent.
in a better way too, and he's
Excellent.
been laughing at our jokes as well. So we appreciate that, Yash.
These should become our reels. We should talk spiritual concepts, in these accents.
Man, I'll only keep laughing throughout that video, but I think you can hold the line and you can do this. Yeah.
I'm still thinking one day I want to do like a comedy act,
Mm. Mm, mm,
stand-up
mm,
comedy, but I want to just do these parodies
mm.
of accents because there's another version that's gay.
Wow.
I know
Give me
when
some
you're
of that,
talking
Rocco.
about spiritual stuff and you're like aligning your chakras and getting the dream catcher at just the right angle, there's there's a lot of humor to be had there.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
oh yeah.
Anyway,
Oh.
all right, man. Take care.
Man,
I'll
Rocco,
catch you
thank you
offline.
so
Bye.
much. Yeah,
Bye.
bye. Bye, guys.